Hey everybody, Michael Snyder here, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is September 9th, and right now we're looking at the infrared satellite imagery here. You can see Tropical System K impacting Southern California as we speak, bringing some pretty strong winds to the higher terrain down there and some good rainfall amounts of places that normally don't get much rainfall. Some of these places out there only get a couple inches of rain a year. You can plainly see our ridge here on the infrared satellite imagery moving across Pacific Northwest. Is this big bulge of air moves across the region here. It wants to flow outward, and that's beginning to bring these easterly winds through Oregon and Washington, British Columbia here for the next couple of days, and that's going to increase our fire danger. It's already brought some smoke aloft. It hasn't reached the surface yet in western Washington, Oregon. That may change here quickly, especially for Oregon. We'll take a look at that here in a moment. You can see Tropical Storm K down here. It's supposed to curl off the coastline here. It's not going to bring any devastating surface winds or anything to Southern California, anything like that. It's mostly a higher terrain wind issue here with some heavy rainfall potential across the area. You can see Los Angeles National Weather Service doing a good job here, kind of highlighting the hazards for everybody that lives down there. You can see some of these precipitation amounts for the mountains. This doesn't seem like much if you live in the Pacific Northwest, but down there they do not get a lot of rainfall, and so this is kind of a big deal here. Now, taking a look here, this is 925 millibars, 2,500 feet. If I put this into motion here, you can kind of see that stronger wind as it moves across some of the mountainous areas here across Southern California. That eventually curls off the coastline and starts to dissipate and leaving Southern California alone. If we look here, this is precipitation total. Just going to run through this quickly here. You can see some big precipitation totals moving into the California mountains there, mainly southern areas there. But some of these desert areas are getting some pretty heavy amounts of rain too. Again, some of those areas get 5 and less inches of rain a year. A lot of areas. Looks like a fairly rainy day coming up here through like places like Los Angeles, or evening, I should say. This like mainly moves in during the afternoon hours here. But yeah, kind of an unusual system here to make it this far towards Southern California. Looking at SeaTac yesterday, 73, just about average. Nice, glorious day yesterday. We're going to start to turn up the heat a bit today. Hard to say just how much these high cloud, or the high smoke, I should say, cuts off these temperatures here for today, but we should be above average. And we're really going to warm up as we get into tomorrow, probably into the 80s at least, even with the smoke layer around, and an outside chance of getting up towards the upper 80s here. But I don't know that we're going to get to that 91 record high that we set back in 2020, just because that smoke layer is out there. And of course, Seattle Tacoma, if you want to go there, the National Weather Service page, we do have the high fire danger, of course, Friday through Sunday. And of course, you can see, just be careful out there. A lot of the problems we would have at this point would be some kind of human caused fire along mainly the west slopes of the Cascades here for the next couple of days. Looking at air quality right now, you can see it's starting to deteriorate a bit through the Portland area here. Looks like Seattle's still good. That's what I show at my air quality index at my house. You can see some pretty good smoke here across the north and central Cascades here, and this should be moving out to the region. You can see some lesser, some poorer air quality out towards Bellingham here too. Looks like some surface smoke is starting to make its way out there as well. Now, this is looking at my house. You can see how it's not reached the surface yet. Still pretty good air quality at my house, even though it looks kind of orange and dirty out there. That smoke is aloft at this time. This is kind of a comparison here. This is July 3rd, all the way back. You can see there was some firework activity on July 3rd. We got that spike there. Then look on the 4th of July. Boom, kind of nasty here. A lot of, air quality index issues here with a lot of particulates in our air. Now, look in the next 1 to 2 days. This is today and tomorrow. You can see that elevated fire risk. Of course, we've been talking about that for a couple of days. Hot, dry, windy index here. Let's go ahead and let this loop through. And you can see we are now into 8, 9, 10 a.m. And you can see that conditions deteriorate rapidly through Oregon there too. In some portions, mainly the foothills of western Washington, does reach out in some portions of Puget Sound. You can see the Stampede Gap here. Those winds are going to be blowing out of the east through there, and some of the coastal areas, even southwest Washington, maybe up towards the northwest point of Washington as well. And you can kind of see that those conditions continue on in through Saturday evening as well. as you can see, it exists for Portland also, as those gorge winds are blowing out of the east also. And finally, we've kind of put an end to that as we go on in through Sunday. By Sunday afternoon, then we start to get that marine push as we go on in through next Monday. So that'll put an end to the main fire risk here for western portions by Monday morning. Taking a look here, mean sea level pressure, you can see the big ridge over British Columbia here, and this air is just flowing outwards across the region. That's what's bringing our strong offshore flow. And by default here, as this ridge moves across, every time you have a big ridge, you have by default a trough. And you can see this trough crawl up our coastline here in the form of a thermal trough here. And this is for this evening into tomorrow. You can see it plainly offshore. Very warm day Saturday. Another pretty warm day Sunday, where they finally kick this marine influence off in through the region here and start to cool us down a bit. Now taking a look here, the HRRR 12 km. Check out this fire. This is 8 meters above the ground, so this would be surface smoke. You can see some of this make its way into the area later this morning. It shows just clipping the Puget Sound. But you can see western Oregon getting a pretty good shot at surface smoke, it looks like here. And check out up north towards Bellingham also, too. Some pretty good surface smoke activity. Looks like it's coming in here by Saturday morning. You can see eastern portions, especially Oregon and Idaho, man alive, dealing with some pretty good smoky conditions out there. So we'll see how much this moves into the Seattle area here and the Portland area, but it looks like Portland should be a bit worse than Seattle as far as surface smoke is concerned. Here we go, NAM 12Z here, the 3 km. You can see the strong offshore winds going on this morning currently, and these will exist all the way through tonight. On in through tonight, you can see they're cooking pretty good through the gorge. Stampede Gap is active here as well. Fraser River Valley getting some offshore flow going all the way out over the Pacific Ocean. Here's this thermal trough is moving up our coastline here. And as we go on into Saturday evening, you see that start to relax a little bit there. And then finally on in through Sunday, we start to get more of a southerly component. But we could still start bringing some smoke around from anything down in Oregon would then move again up over Washington before we finally go back onshore. Looks like by about Sunday evening, that marine push is going to be moving in, and then we can start to clear this smoke out, at least for western portions. It would be a much more difficult task to clear out that smoke for eastern portions, as always. Now taking a look here, mean sea level pressure, just taking a look at this ridge that moves across this big dome of air. You can see that pressure is much higher here over the interior versus the coastline here, and that's kind of the ridge moving over here and the trough by default. So that's why we're getting these offshore winds going on through the day today and tomorrow. Now taking a look a little bit off into the extended here, this is the European. We're trying to find any systems that might be coming our way in the future. It goes our big ridge going over top of us, and our marine push as we go on in through early next week. And as we roll on in through next week, kind of benign weather, then you can see the European wants to carve a trough here over the Pacific Northwest, showing some of the ensemble runs are showing some precipitation for western Washington and some of the higher terrain, especially. As you can see, it digs a pretty sharp trough out there and then reinforces that near the end of the run here. Now let's check out what the GFS says here. This is hot off the presses. I have not looked at this 12Z yet. Let's make sure it's up to date here. And we'll go ahead and see that ridge move across. Here goes that upper level low, finally kicking through. Marine push through next week. And you can see no major heat wave in store coming up here. Excuse me, as we go on in through later next week, you can see the GFS carves that trough out, but it's much more progressive, moves off to the east quicker. That would be not much of a precipitation maker. Just a little bit maybe would keep us generally, obviously no heat wave at this point, but I'm kind of trying to pick out any kind of precipitation making systems. Going off further than the GFS, however, you can see the system spin up, but we're getting way far out there now, 294 hours. We're in fantasy forecast land at that point. But the models are at least showing some troughing potential for next weekend and maybe start to get some precipitation in here for our mountainous regions, especially across the area. Taking a look here, Portland, you can see a pretty warm day today, but I don't know how much the smoke's going to chop down those temperatures. Looks like it could make it into the 90s tomorrow, again, depending on how much smoke there is around. Then you can see the cool down coming Monday and on in through next week, much more seasonable temperatures as we move towards the potential of a trough on in through next week. Here's Tri-Cities. They've knocked down the temperatures a bit here. This might be because of that smoke aloft across the region there. Seattle, Tacoma looks like The European ensemble is still showing 91, and if we don't get too much of a smoke impact, we could hit the 90-degree mark here on Saturday. We'll continue to watch that. You can see we warm up today. The upper 70s, probably towards 80 degrees across the area. Then you see the cool down as we go through Monday and on through next week. Now, taking a look here, we're looking out a little bit into Fantasyland, but this is next weekend here. You can see that spike and that kind of potential for some precipitation here through the extended forecast on the European ensemble run. Now, this is all 50 individual members. As you look on the left side here, there's the control run, then there's 50 individual members that are just kind of tweaked a little bit and left to run at their own discretion. And you can see some of them bring a few tenths of an inch through SeaTac. Higher totals would be possible for the mountainous areas, of course. In fact, let's go ahead and do something like Stampede Pass. You can see a little bit better precipitation agreement here for Stampede Pass, but you see there are some model runs that still do not have much precipitation at all. Here's for Seattle Tacoma on the GFS, a little bit different, just some light amounts. I mean, a tenth of an inch here, 3/4 of an inch on one of these runs here. There, kind of a really rainy outlier here on what is this ensemble run number 9 for the GFS. But it's kind of showing that troughing potential here as we go on in through next weekend. But again, it's a little far out there. We have a lot of time to look at it, but it's something I'm going to be watching for next weekend because we could really use this precipitation especially across the mountainous areas. Really everywhere it could use this precipitation. So yeah, that's what we'll be watching next. But yeah, this ridge is going to be coming across the region here today and tomorrow. Going to be nice and warm across the region. Sunday, the last warm day before we start to cool down next week. And so, yeah, watch that sky for the smoke. It's really hard to predict just how much smoke's going to get into any certain area here, looking at the models or not. You just never know exactly. Plus, you could get new fire starts, Western Washington or Oregon. We do have that elevated risk as well. So heads up if you're out there, just try to be careful. Don't be that guy that starts the big fire out here in one of the foothill areas across the region. But anyway, we'll continue to take a look at these extended forecasts, and it's getting to be that time of year where we start to strengthen this jet stream and start to bring it down a little further south towards our way. So anytime, we'll be watching, and I hope you guys are having a good day, and we'll talk again tomorrow.